So hello and welcome, Dr. Eugene speaking, and I'm recording this video mostly for my students who have to work with SWOT analysis. And I would like to share with you some ideas about how to conduct a SWOT analysis in the correct way. Just so you understand, I am a big opponent of SWOT analysis just because I see how often it is misused or how often students do mistakes when they provide a SWOT analysis. And there are some reasons for this, and the reasons are that you probably know how SWOT analysis looks like. And the reason is it is very often vague, and there can be different things that can be taken as a strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats, and nobody knows how they are selected. Unstructured, so students and practitioners seldom introduce structure to their SWOT analysis. It almost always follows the principle garbage in, garbage out, or anything goes. You can take any strength, any weaknesses, any opportunities, any threats. We have identities issues without providing solutions. We identify issues without providing solutions. And the other one is we have issues that are not prioritized, and we have the strengths that are not prioritized, weaknesses that are not prioritized when we develop a SWOT matrix. Some information may fit several quadrants, and sometimes things that are opportunities can be seen as threats, and weaknesses can be seen as strength. That's why it is very important that you understand what is actually located where, and you argue well why you put something into strengths and not into weaknesses. And it may not reflect the reality of business, because in the business world we have a lot of issues, and the SWOT analysis is most often used as cherry picking. You pick some ideas, some opportunities, some threats, and you ignore the rest of opportunities, you ignore the rest of threats. That is why we can theoretically make a strong SWOT analysis if we avoid all the issues. If it is vague, you can make it concrete, and in the next slides I'm going to show you how you do it. If it is unstructured, you can introduce structure. If it is garbage in, garbage out analysis, you can actually use reliable and factual informations. The issue of identifying issues without providing solutions, work out solutions based on the scheme that you will see in the next slides. Not prioritizing issues, just do prioritizing. And some informations may fit several quadrants. That's why you need to use reliable frameworks that will be precise regarding the role of a certain item that you have picked. And finally, find facts supporting external validity, and it is very seldom that students or practitioners do something like this. That's why stay with me for the next slides to find out how to actually do it. Regarding how to make the SWOT analysis concrete, if you look at the quadrants of opportunities and threats, then actually there is the market-based view that is responsible for opportunities and threats for industry and market analysis. And one of the good tools to do the analysis is the 5 forces framework. And if you do it rigorously, then you automatically introduce structure and make your analysis concrete. Regarding strengths and weaknesses, you have to look at the resource-based view. You have to be able to indicate your resources and capabilities. And if you do it correctly, then you can really provide strong strengths and weaknesses that you can use in your analysis. Regarding structure, here is an example. This is the 5 forces framework. As you know, these are the rivalry among existing firms. These are threat of entrance, threat of substitutes, bargaining power of suppliers, and bargaining power of buyers. And for each of these threats, you have several items that you can look at. For instance, if you talk about substitutes, you can talk about the propensity of a buyer to substitute, or about the relative performance of substitutes, because not all substitutes can deliver the same level of performance. And this will make the analysis much more structured and much more powerful. The same with regard to suppliers and buyers. For instance, their price sensitivity. If you make your SWOT analysis, think about all these items that you have to talk about. Within the price sensitivity, about proportion in costs of the final product, products differentiation, internal competition, and so on. And for the bargaining power, size and concentration of firms in the market, available information, because the less information you know, the higher is your bargaining power. The less information you show to the others, the higher is your bargaining power. And if you attended my lectures, then you know what I'm talking about. And ability to integrate vertically or in-source resources has also impact on the bargaining power. So introduce this simple structure, and it will make your SWOT analysis much more powerful. And we're now talking about the market-based view. If we talk about the resource-based view, Don't forget to introduce structure regarding your resources. And you have, according to Grant and Jordan, 3 types of resources: the tangible, intangible, and human resources. And that's why when you conduct your SWOT analysis, think about these different types of resources. And think about something that resource-based to you is not addressing directly. It's more from capability-based to you. But to explain it simple, it's not about the resources. It is about the capabilities, or what you do with these resources. Several firms can have similar resources, but some of them will become successful, some become less successful, and it is because they develop routines that become capability that help them to get more use of the resources that they possess. And finally, don't forget, so if you are looking for where to find capabilities, there are 2 approaches according to Grant and Jordan. This is the firm's functional areas, and you can see in the functional areas what kind of resources what kind of capabilities you can address, or the firm's activities. And activities you can find in the added value framework, where you see how the value is added, and theoretically for each of the items in this framework you can add a capability like inbound logistics capability, operations capability, outbound logistics capability, and so on. And finally, don't forget, if you talk about the capabilities and resources, so it means if we talk about the weaknesses and strengths, to talk about the threshold capabilities. So what is the minimum threshold? What is necessary to enter the market? What is necessary to succeed on the market? Because sometimes you cannot even enter the market if you don't have a certain capability that is needed. And the next aspect that I criticize is the garbage in, garbage out. And here you have to use factual information. So you can collect data using surveys, you can make observations, you can collect secondary data, and usually we have plenty of information on the market available. And if you just pick any opportunity, any threat, any weakness without analyzing data, it will always look vague. It will always be, not always, most likely be not completely correct, because you will be driven by your impressions, by your system 1 thinking, by the prospects, how you perceive things. Are you in a loss mode and a gain mode, and so on. Collecting data is always a good idea. My students, they often apply the SWOT analysis to the case studies, and if it is a case study, you have to do something different in the case study. Just before I forget it, differentiate between you as a buyer and you as a supplier. Remember, we had the 5 forces framework, and we have the bargaining power. There are the same factors that drive bargaining power, but it depends on where are you on this line. Are you the buyer and it is your bargaining power as a buyer, or are you a supplier and it's your bargaining power as a supplier? That's why the same factor may have different impact based on where are you between this line. Are you selling or are you buying? Regarding the case studies, look in the text for numbers. Most of case studies provide plenty of numbers that you can use for your analysis. Interpret numbers and calculate new data. Some numbers are not the final ones and need to calculate based on sales. You can calculate your revenue or you can calculate your profits. And usually the case studies, they omit some data in order to give you an opportunity to make your own calculations and come to your conclusions. And finally, case study is not restricting. You can also look for other evidence. For instance, the case study that I usually work with my students is the BlackBerry case. And in the BlackBerry case that we have from Harvard Business Review, they have plenty of data, but there are also additional information. It is the real case that happened between 1995 and 2015, when they almost stopped existing. Look for additional interviews, look for additional information online. You will find plenty of information that will help you find evidence, interpret this evidence, and explain why it matters for your case, why it matters for your SWOT analysis. Argue based on the evidence. You can also find in a case different phrases or letters. We have in the BlackBerry case the letter from some employers who explain how they perceived the issue in the firm. That's why you can also use it as evidence. It is also an additional carrier of important information. Don't forget to prioritize. You have the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and you can list them, all the strengths you can find. And list them, let's say make a list of 15 strengths or 20, as many as you can. The same for weaknesses. And you can sort them and focus on the strongest strengths and on the weakest weaknesses, that you don't have some weaknesses, that you have the list from which you pick those that are really important. For opportunities, make opportunities based on profits, because there are plenty of opportunities on the market. Which one will you pick? So pick those opportunities that promise the highest profits, because I don't know, the new emerging technology may not be related to profits depending on what case you analyze, what is your situation. And regarding threats, don't pick any threat. Calculate the threat based on the probability and impact of its appearance. So yes, there is a threat of, let's say, earthquake, but the probability is very low. Impact would be high, but probability is low. But the entrance of a new firm to your markets, of, let's say, a substitute, and if you analyzed the propensity to substitute and you know it can be a danger, then you know impact will be high and the probability will be high. So you should focus on this threat first and then continue, and then probably one of the last one will be the earthquake. Now, how to develop a strategy? It is the skill that probably you all know, but if you answer the questions below that I'm going to show you in a second, you can develop the core for your strategy. And the first question is the relationship between the strengths and opportunities. Can we use our strengths to address or maximize discovered opportunities? Try to answer this question. And again, you have already prioritized strengths and you have already highest profitable opportunities. If you made prioritizing from the last step, it will make your strategy much more better and much more elaborated than if you pick any strength and any opportunities. Then look at the relationship between the strengths and threats. How can our strengths help us minimize the impact or occurrence of threats? Do we have something in our resources and our capabilities that will help us prevent the impact of threats? Or maybe we can even impact the probability of their occurrence. Then we have the relationship between weaknesses and opportunities. How can we use discovered opportunities to avoid weaknesses or to make them into strength? There are many ways how you can do it, and again, it will work only if you prioritize them and you know your main weaknesses, really main, not any. We have plenty of weaknesses, all of us, personally and within the firms. But focus on those that are the key weaknesses and focus on the highest profit-related opportunities. And finally, you have the weaknesses to threats relationship that you have to discuss. This will be how can we avoid weaknesses to impact the probability of occurrence or impact of threats. And if you answer these questions correctly and previously you build your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in a structured way and you prioritize them, then most likely the strategy that you will develop will be much better than if you take something in a vague way. The important aspect that most practitioners and most students forget is that actually the external validity. Because the SWOT analysis is something that happens kind of in theory on a sheet of paper. How can we be sure that this strategy will work in the real life? And for this, you need to look for some external validity. Maybe cases, situations, people, settings who already did something like this. And if they did and succeeded, this could be an indication for the external validity. If you have an option that nobody applied, there might be a reason why other people didn't apply it. So we are creative, we can come up with novel solutions, but it's very unlikely if you analyze a simple case or if you make a simple decision that nobody has thought about this issue hitherto. Will your SWOT-based strategy be implementable in real-life conditions? What could be the problem? So think about the implementation. What about the demotivated people? What about the environmental change? If the environment is turbulent, it can happen that your idea will not work because it needs a 5-year strict plan that you cannot follow. Remember, SWOT aims to produce working strategy, so it should be working, otherwise your strategy might work only in theory, and we don't want your strategy to work in theory, we want to have a practicable solution. So to do, think about obstacles and possible risks during the implementation, so not only about the strategy, but also examples of what it is and also how to implement it, what could be the risks. Provide examples of similar successful strategies. Some firms may have done something like this in a different market, maybe in different volume, but it can be an indication that the strategy that you suggest will work indeed. This is what we call the external validity. And you cannot be sure what is the single strategy, but you can make a list of scenarios and say that there are like 3 possible ways how the market will evolve. And for this, we have 3 strategies. The one that assumes that everything works fine as we expected, no risk appear. The second one is some risk appear, and the third one, everything worked differently as we assumed. That is why we need a, let's say, different strategy where we need to focus on things that really bring us money and forget about the things that are kind of great opportunities, but we might not know how to achieve them, or there will be some obstacles that will not allow us to do it. To summarize, make your analysis on separate sheets. If it is a simple solution with a simple case, let's say 5 to 10 pages case, you will have about 1 to 2 sheets for each quadrant, just listing different threats and opportunities and how you analyze them and how you prioritize them. Select the items with the highest priority and those which will become a part of your strategy. Make a simple SWOT matrix, but don't forget to show to your employer, don't forget to show to your lecturer that actually there was a big analysis behind it and that you analyzed, let's say, 2 dozens of strengths and 2 dozens of opportunities. And from them you picked, based on some logic that you should also explain, 3. Present the SWOT matrix, explain how it contributes to a strategy. It is not obvious to people who are not on this analysis why you pick the items and why they should work perfectly fine. That's why the presentations is not about showing, it's about explaining how you selected strengths, how you selected weaknesses, how you selected opportunities, and why are the profits that you assume higher in some event and lower in different event. And the threat, what is the probability and impact calculation behind it. And then you can present your strategy. So first of all, explain how you came up with a SWOT matrix, what was there, what came into this SWOT matrix, and only then you can present your strategy. Don't start with a strategy, people will not believe it. Don't start with a simplified SWOT matrix, people will not know that you were rigorous enough. And if you have done it, then theoretically you will have the correctly done SWOT analysis. So as you see, I'm an opponent of SWOT analysis because mostly people ignore all of these aspects. They pick some weaknesses, some strengths, come up with some ideas that seems to be logical. The problem is that it's seldom practicable and seldom correct. But it is in your hand to avoid it and to make a great SWOT matrix and impress people by your analysis. I hope it was interesting. Wish you all the best. Good luck with your strategy, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.